welcome to Series 10, Episode 7 of In Suspense, a podcast and vodcast for fans and writers of crime fiction. I'm Nikki Smith, and today my co-host is the lovely Lauren North. Hello, Lauren.
Hello, everybody.
In our last episode, Lesley and I were chatting to CJ Cook about gothic thrillers, which was very interesting.
Wasn't it? And I really loved CJ Cook's interpretation of the Gothic and how important the setting is to it. Like, I don't think I was stupid not to have appreciated that. But you can't, when she said you can't set it on a beach, I was like, oh yeah, Nikki, you can't, can you? It made me think of you.
Well, I'm sure someone will probably end up doing something like that. It'll be a twist on the genre or something. But no, it was really interesting to listen to her. And a very appropriate time of year, I thought, for it as well.
Yeah.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking to Julie Cohen about writing into genres. But before that, we thought we'd get your news. How are you, Lauren? What have you been up to?
I am very well, thank you. After quite a busy first half of 2023, I'm really enjoying having quite a quiet period, and there's not that many events at the moment, or I've said no to a few as well. And I'm just, writing most days, which I'm finding really lovely. I had 2 cover reveals in the last 2 weeks. I had the first one, which was Clickbait, which is my next LC North, which is coming out in April. And then I had The Teacher's Secret, which is my next book, a tour book, which is out in February. So I think it looked on social media really like quite insanely busy, but it just was just happened that both cover reveals happened quite at the similar time. But yeah, that's about it really. And I'm not the only one who's had a cover reveal though, because you and Lesley have both had cover reveals. So Lesley had hers for the other Tenant, which I've just finished and really loved. And you've had one too, Nikki. So how was that? How did it go?
Yes, it was really good, thank you. I must say I loved your cover reveals, both of them, particularly the one for Clickbait. I think it's absolutely brilliant cover. I love it. So yes, I might have had a little bit of a sneak preview of it. Very good for those people out there who want to get hold of it. I think it's on NetGalley, isn't it, at the moment?
Yes, it is, but I'm not looking.
Yes, wise. I don't look either. Yes, but I had a cover reveal for The Guests, which will be out next June. And Viking have done me a lovely little kind of cover reveal with a video, which was great. And done a really good job. And I love the cover. It ties in really well to the beach party, so that was very exciting. And then other than that, similar to you, I've just been working on my next book. I think it's weird because in publishing you have that kind of the book that everybody else is seeing or that readers see to buy is the one that's already been done, and you're now moved on to the next one. So it's a very strange situation. People are excited about the thing that you've already finished and you've kind of moved on to something else. So that's been good to be able to just get my head down and working on things. And despite the horrendous weather, I have managed to get out for a book launch last week, which was really lovely. Eleni Syracuse book called The Unspeakable Acts of Zena Pavlou, launched in Daunt's Books last week, and she's going to be coming on In Suspense next
episode, isn't it?
Yeah, it's next week, with Emma Flint. So that's going to be really exciting to talk to her.
Brilliant. Yes. So we're talking today about writing in 2 genres, and I have got some thoughts on it, obviously, but I thought we would just get Julie on to have a chat as well, and we'll talk our thoughts through with her at the same time, if that sounds okay with you, Nikki.
That sounds like a fantastic idea.
All right, well, welcome Julie to In Suspense. I almost said welcome Nikki to In Suspense. I was like, you're here, Nikki. Welcome Julie to In Suspense. Welcome, Julie, to In Suspense. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Crazed and stressed, but it is so good to be here and to see your smiling faces.
Thank you. And to see yours. Would you mind, please, by starting by introducing yourself to our listeners?
All right. Well, my name is Julie Cohen, but I also write under the name Julie Mae Cohen. I am the author of Bad Men, which is my debut thriller. It is a story of a female serial killer, Safi Huntley Oliver, who only kills bad men.
I just love that so much. You have neglected to mention that you have twice been selected for Richard and Judy Book Club in the UK. You're the Associate Lecturer in Creative Writing at the University of Reading, Vice President of the Romantic Novelists Association, and a founder of the RNA Rainbow Chapter for LGBTQ plus writers. You won the 2020 Romantic Novelist Association Inclusion Award. You're a multi-million copy selling author, and Bad Men has also been selected for a BBC Radio 2 Book Club pick.
Yeah, all of that too.
That is true. Yes,
thank you for mentioning that.
Well, I couldn't not mention it, could I? So as you know, Julie, for the number of times I have fangirled you when I've met you in person, I'm a huge fan of all of your work. Ever since I attended a weekend writing workshop that you were part of in, I think it was either 2007 or 2008. It was so long ago, I can't remember. Now, I've watched you move from romance to your beautifully crafted women's fiction novels, and now you're writing, you've written a feminist serial killer novel, Bad Men, which I loved so much. I particularly loved the fun and humour that Safi brought to the book. So would you start by telling us a little bit more about Bad Men, please?
Okay, so as you said, it's about Safi Huntley Oliver, who is a treble heiress. She's rich, she's beautiful, she's charming. She's on the boards of several charities. She has homes all over the world. And she's devoted to her younger sister, Susie, and she also happens to be a serial killer in her spare time, of which she does have quite a bit. And the book is about her being a serial killer, but really what it's about is the serial killer part of it is not a problem. Safi is the happiest character I have ever written. She has no problems with her world. She thinks that it's great. She kills the bad men and she thinks she's doing a service to humanity, and she has no guilt or anything about it. She does worry occasionally that she might be a sociopath, but who cares? If she's happy and she has good shoes, who cares? So but her real problem is that she has a massive crush on a true crime podcaster whose name is Jonathan DeRosiers. And Jonathan is a good man. That is, he's obsessed with true crime, but his podcast is a bit of a campaigning podcast. So he likes to he has got innocent people out of prison, and he has solved some cases. And when he donates some of his profits to victims and victim support. So he's a good guy, but he also, shares an interest in murder with Safi. So she figures that he'll be perfect, because if you're a heterosexual serial killer of bad men, sooner or later you're going to have to worry about killing your boyfriend, which is that's a real dilemma that Safi has. So finding John, she's like, oh, we have a lot in common. So she does pretty much through the book, she does everything that she possibly can in order to get her man. So it's not only a thriller, it's also probably the most rom-com book that I've written in many, many years, because it's a very twisted and weird rom-com with a lot of severed heads.
Yes.
Oh, well, as Lauren said, it's an amazingly fun thriller to read. Safi is such a brilliant character. As you say, she's incredibly wealthy, and of course she's a serial killer. Why not? She's got many traits which could make her, I think, very unlikable, I guess, to readers, serial killer being one of them. But actually, completely love her, or I did, and I know Lauren did, and I think readers do as well. So can you tell us a little bit more about her character, where she came from, and how she developed between the different drafts of the book?
Safi did not develop at all. Safi arrived fully fledged in my imagination. And so the first chapter of that book I wrote years and years ago. I don't know when, probably 2017. as her sort of, the first chapter of the book is her origin story. It's the first time she kills somebody. And it's not really a spoiler. It's she kills her stepfather, who is a pedophile, in order to save her younger sister from his for being preyed upon by him. And so she kills him and saves her sister, and that's her origin story, which I think is maybe one of the reasons why she's sympathetic, is because she becomes a killer in order to protect someone she loves, and really out of self-defense. And this guy is a real turd, so he deserved it. But she has stayed the same. The character who I had the most problem with through various drafts of the novel was Jonathan, because she was so strong in my head that it was difficult to write about him. But I knew that I needed a normal person in this dialogue too. And so he was harder, and the book did go through several revisions where he was various people. I mean, at one point he was a woman, and it was a whole sapphic killing Eve thing, but then I decided not to go for that. So it just, that changed a lot. But Safi herself, she came to me fully fledged, and part of that is, I think, just genuine female rage, that you just want to, it's hard being a woman. And I think in a patriarchal society, we have a lot of rage, and I think as we get older and older, our rage only gets worse and worse. So that was part of it. She was also inspired by, I don't know, I am such a total geek, and I for many years and still was a fanable, which is like a crazed fan of the TV show Hannibal with Mads Mikkelsen and Hugh Dancy. And I have written so many hundreds of thousands of words of fan fiction for that show. And it actually started out as a bit of a fan fiction for that show, which back in 2016, which I changed and changed, but that dynamic. I mean, I love the Hannibal Lecter character in Hannibal. Hannibal is before Hannibal Lecter is in jail. He's sort of at large in the world, and he's really rich, he's really charming, he's very urbane, he just fools everybody, and he's having the best time. And I just adore that character. And even though Safi is quite different, she has different she's not as evil as Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter really doesn't care about anything, whereas Safi has a heart. But I just love that dynamic, and I love that sort of character. And I've been a fan of those books and those movies, since I was 12. I mean, really a very long time. And so it's so much fun to write a character that falls into that genre.
Yeah, I can imagine. And also what must have been really fun is to write the bad men, because what I found so brilliant when I was reading it was that some of them, and not all of them died, but some of the bad men were just on that level of being like a bit of a dickhead. Sorry to anyone listening who didn't like that word, but just so masculine and really pushy and just idiots. And I think it was very easy when you were reading it to identify that you have met in your life pretty much an example, like a carbon copy or an example of pretty much all the men that you mentioned, which I absolutely love. And so did the idea for that come from this concept of just all that feminine rage you mentioned?
Yes, it did. Very specific parts. I mean, very specific experiences as well. I mean, I think when Sarah Everard was murdered, I did a thread on Twitter which went viral, which was about a time that I was sexually harassed on the underground. And I was talking about that, and sort of talking about the concept of not all men, and why I think it's wrong, because I think that many men who do not harass other women are complicit in standing by and watching it happen, or just not educating themselves enough to understand that it's going on. And when I wrote that, thread. I mean, it's had millions of views. I don't know how many. It went completely. It was mentioned in the Washington Post. I mean, it went crazy. That was a great experience and also a very uncomfortable experience because with all the women who said, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about, me too. And with all the men who said, gosh, you really made me think about this. I need to, talk about this with my male friends and with the women in my life. It also got picked up by, the men's rights activists and the misogynists and the trolls. And so the abuse that followed that was very, very intense. And while that was happening, I didn't really write about it. I was just trying to cope with it. But certainly in some of the instances that I wrote about in the book, I was channeling that particular helplessness and rage. When strangers come up and tell you on the internet, that you are too ugly to rape. Or that, you're too Jewish to rape, or that you're lying about what you really experienced, or that you're literally a Nazi. It's that was a lot of the rage that I put into the book.
Well, I mean, you did an amazing job getting that across, I think.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass you on to Nikki now because you've already answered my follow-up question.
Yes, I loved what you said about Hannibal. It also, I think it made me think of Dexter as well. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh God,
series,
yeah.
that there's that with that humor, the element of humor in it. I thought, yeah, but obviously a female version. But yes. So our topic for today is writing in two genres. And you have obviously written in multiple genres, including romance, women's fiction, and historical. And right now you have two names. So you're Julie Cohen with your women's fiction and Julie Mae Cohen for your thrillers. And you also have two separate publishers. I think that's right, for each genre. So is your plan to keep on writing both kinds of books, or do you not see yourself sticking to one particular genre?
It is the plan to keep on writing both kinds of books. It takes a lot of juggling. So it was always the plan to keep on writing both kinds of books. I think it's going to be more of a juggling act than I thought it was going to be, dealing with two publishers, and more than that really, because there's the overseas editions too, and it's a lot. And as I said before, I'm very, very, very stressed right now. So I think if I do continue, my publishing schedule will have to slow down a little bit. But I do love writing different genres. I think it keeps you fresh and nimble, and it helps you reach more readers. And it allows you to say very similar things. Like, all my books are feminist, but Bad Men is feminism with knives. So it allows you to get, if you have a strong message across or something you're passionate about, it allows you to get that across in ways that are different, and that are fun or serious or evocative or whatever. And so I like doing both. I like having both of those sides of my personality, and both those types of writing out there. I have in my office, I'm not in my office right now, but in my office, I have on one side, I have on the wall, I have Post-it notes with all the characteristics of Julie Cohen books up on the side. So they say evocative, emotional, female-centric, relationship-focused, setting, a deep setting, lyrical writing. I have all that there on the left side. And then on the right side, I have Julie Mae Cohen, which is like feminist, fresh, quite a high body count, outrageous, that sort of thing. And so when I'm planning each, I physically turn myself to look at those so that I'm completely reminded of my author promise on both sides.
That's a really good idea.
That's such a good idea. Yeah, I love that.
Do you talk to your publishers about managing the schedules in advance so that you don't kind of have too many deadlines all at once? I mean, I know what publishing's like, and it never quite works like that. But in theory, should they be spaced out?
In theory, I mean, it's a juggling act. I think it's a juggling act for me. It's a juggling act for them. I think, my publishers are very gracious about being considerate of each other. And of course, publishing is such a small world. It's they all know each other anyway, but it is a juggling act because, of course, as you know, it's not just about writing the book, then it's about revising the book, and it's about copy edits, and all of those things depend on someone who is not just you. So I can write 2 books in 12 months, but if it depends on how much time my editor has to read those books, and send me revisions, and then how big the revisions are going to be. So it does bleed into each other, and that's why I think it is frankly a lot more work than I naively thought it would be. Even after I've had so many books published, I thought, oh sure, I can do this, but it is a lot of work. And I actually, this morning I was speaking to University of Reading MA students in creative writing about time management, and I'd been booked to do this talk on time management, and I was just like, oh my God, you have got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. It's like I haven't had a day off since May.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I can imagine.
When you started off, did you see yourself writing in different genres?
I'm not sure. I think yes and no. I mean, my agent didn't really want me to do it until I forced it upon her. I think it's easier for an agent to sell books in one genre, to concentrate on one thing, not to dilute your audience. But then again, when I signed with my agent, I was already writing for another publisher. So, and then she went and, took me somewhere elsewhere. And for a while I did have parallel careers, one which she represented and one which she didn't. So yes and no. Yes and no. I've always tried to write what I enjoy, and what I enjoy sometimes changes.
Yeah, that does make sense. So you've mentioned time management, and you've mentioned post-its. So I just want to pause here and flag that you have, because I mention post-its quite a lot in this podcast because I'm a huge post-it fan, and I've always been a post-it fan, but then I signed up for your, is it novel gazing? Is that what it's called? Your post-it, how to write with post-its course, which was really brilliant. So I was just flagging that if anybody's listening who wants to know more about how post-its can completely change and revise your writing, I would highly recommend Julie's course.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. You know what? I will send you a discount coupon for your listeners.
Oh, you are so lovely. Thank you. I can add that into the bottom of where all the details go. So my question is, so can you talk us about your writing process and how does that change at all from one genre to another?
It really doesn't change from one genre to another. I mean, I think we know that as writers that every book is different. So every book requires different things. Even if you think you have something that works, it might not work for your next book, or you have to adapt it. I'm generally a planner. I really do plan things in advance. And even though the thrillers have a lot more plot, and the commercial literary fiction sort of crossover book club books have a lot more emotion and less plot, I still plan both of those things in a great amount of detail before I start. And yeah, I use post-its. And I generally, I'm not a good person at sort of flying into the blue by the seat of my pants. I feel very insecure doing that, especially if I've only got 4 months to write, a first draft. You need to have a roadmap. So my process is not all that different. And interestingly, my process is the same, but interestingly, because I wrote, like this year, I wrote a commercial literary emotional women's fiction book. I don't like the term women's fiction, so I try to avoid it, but a sort of emotional book club book. And then immediately started writing a thriller. I found that I had sort of mistakenly used some thriller beats in the emotional book, and I had sort of mistakenly used some emotional relationship novel beats in the thriller. So thank goodness for my editors, who are amazing people, who can mention to me, you know, hey, Julie, if you're writing a thriller, your midpoint reversal should not focus on emotions. It should probably focus on someone getting shot messily in the head. So you'd think that I would learn that. That would be sort of self-evident, but, you know, that's how it goes.
Yeah, I can see that can be a problem.
Yeah.
But my daily routine is when I'm writing, I try to write 1,000 words a day, or if I'm writing very quickly, 1,300 words a day. I veg out if I try to do much more than that. I just get tired and I can't do anything the next day. So I really.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's snap for me. I can write 1,000 words a day, but sometimes I feel very slow compared to a lot of people I see on kind of Twitter who can manage to, you know, or something. There's no way I can do that. So yeah, that's interesting. Do you have to put a certain amount of time aside to write a novel? You were saying you do 2 a year, so is it 6 months for each genre?
Yes, that's how I have done it this past year. 6 months. I don't think that is quite enough time. I think it's enough time for some people. I don't think it's quite enough time for me. I think my writing process, a lot of my writing process goes on in revisions rather than in first draft. I really believe in building and layering a novel. Especially the emotional novels, where it's so important to just get to the depth of those emotions. And it's hard to do that the first time through, especially if you have, you know, multiple narrators and you have to go into each one of them. So I would say that I put aside so much for a first draft, but then I really do need to build in time for revisions on top of that. And that's where I am right now, having, you know, delivered 2 books this year, one in May and one in October. So I guess that is about 5-6 months in between. I am now in the process of revising one and then the other to, you know, bring them up to where I want them to be.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean about the juggling act, because as I write in 2 different genres, sort of, and at one point this year I had 2 sets of structural edits land on the same day, which was quite stressful. And it does mean this. I just did one and then the other, because luckily I was given quite a long lead time on both. So I just one and then the other. Don't context switch. So yes, one and then the other. And I think I was quite stressed, wasn't I, Nikki? It was not a good time. I was also publishing, and The Ugly Truth came out the same month as well. So it was like, couldn't have been a worse month, really. Oh, the best month. But I think that we are seeing more and more authors go down the path of writing in multiple genres. Oh, I don't know if maybe I'm just paying more attention to it, or if we are seeing it, and because it is more possible now with there being more publishers and self-publishing and more flexibility. But why do you think this is? Why do you think more authors seem to be publishing in more than one genre now?
I think you're right that the market is there are more options for publishing for authors anyway, and so, you know, certainly compared to when I was starting out, like, oh, it's almost 20 years ago now. In fact, it will be 20 years ago in June. It's there's so much more flexibility of ways of getting books out there to readers. So that's one reason. And I know that's something that a lot of people take advantage of. I mean, people who have hybrid careers and you know, really make the most of, you know, reaching these readers, and gosh, so much energy. I just really admire these people. But I also think that if you are, and some of it is just being bored, you know, and just writing something new, and you have to keep things fresh for yourself and you know, keep things going. I do think that if you want to make most or all of your money through publishing, I think you have to be extremely nimble. And the thing is that the industry changes very often. The days of authors being nurtured and built by a single publisher are pretty much over. There are exceptions, but in general, I think most authors with a long-term career are going to move publisher several times and possibly move genre. You have to invent yourself. The industry loves a debut. And, when you've got 14, 15 books under your belt, you are no longer debut. And are obsessed with track, which, sometimes the only way to get rid of bad track is to reinvent yourself in a different genre. So I think it is a financial necessity for many authors right now. So not just, the great things, I keep it interesting, reach new readers, hooray. Also you need to juggle a lot to make a living as an author these days. Even if you're not making a living as an author, you have to juggle a lot just to get any sort of income at all.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I agree.
Nikki, what do you think? Have you got anything you want to add? And also, what other genre would you write in if you could?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you were saying about financially. I think that, as we know from the kind of bookseller articles that come out, and advances are shrinking and things, and I think it does become a necessity for a lot of authors now to manage, publishing in more than one genre or multiple publishers. Gosh, if I had to do another genre, I would probably like to write horror. I think
I wouldn't have thought you were going to say that. Oh, you should do that. And Barnaby Waters, BP Water, he's got a horror coming out. It has
I
a scuttle.
Yes,
Scuttle,
with a big spider.
Spider on the cover. Yeah, and
I was like, ooh. Yeah, looks brilliant.
It does. And I saw him for lunch last week, and I got to actually see the cover because he showed it to me, because it's not public yet, and it's gorgeous. So watch out. I'm looking forward to reading that, even though I'm a big scaredy cat. And I wanted to know, Julie, actually, and this is going off the script a bit, but were you under any pressure to change your name more to distinguish the two genres? Because it's amazing that you've managed to keep your name and you've just added a middle name. Was there any discussions on you just becoming Barbara Thwaite or something?
I did submit the book initially under a pseudonym, but my publisher wanted me to keep a version of my name because I do have a sales record and a readership already. So that was the idea. And the thing is, I have published under pseudonyms throughout the years. Probably you wouldn't know any of them because it's been pretty weird stuff and niche stuff. But otherwise, I've always published under my own name, even from moving from publisher to publisher and genre to genre. And it's probably not important to anybody else, but it's important to me that, I get to stand behind what I do. That said, I do also publish under pseudonyms, like some pretty whacked out stuff. So I have no problem with pseudonyms. I love them. It's really fun to be somebody else.
Oh, that's so good that your publisher wanted to keep the name, and for you as well. I think, like you say, just to stand behind it and to say, look, I've got these things, both of them coming out. I think that's amazing. And so I just wondered, what advice would you give to an author considering writing in a second genre, in terms of writing a different style of book, but also managing workload, which we've both said is tough.
The post-its on either side really help. I think identifying your reader promise is really important, especially writing commercial fiction. And by reader promise, just in case I'm not clear on that, I mean what your book will give to a reader. The very clear thing from the cover and from the premise and from the writing that the reader is going to get out of your book. A friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, an amazing writing teacher, an incredible writer, Susanna Kearsley, gave a talk about this at a conference that I was at recently, and I didn't get to see her talk, but she said that every writer has 5 core things about themselves, and that they have in all of their books, and you can change up to 2 of them and still have that book be recognizably yours. And I think that's so interesting. I don't I've been trying to identify what those 5 things are, about mine and what they are for Julie Mae, and how you change them around. But, she says that if you're known for writing really good characters, that's one of your 5 things. And that's probably the core thing that you can never change. If you're known for this incredible sort of lyrical prose, you probably don't want to change that thing. You can use something else. And so if you have 3 out of those 5 things intact for every book that you write, you're going to have a through line of your body of work. I love that theory. I haven't exactly identified how it works for me, but I love it. It seems instinctively right, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I love
Yeah, it does,
the
actually.
idea that authors have, sort of USPs or things that you do very well and that can carry through your everything that you write,
Yeah, I think that is true, actually. I'll be going away to try and work out what 5 things they are.
Yeah, I don't know if Susanna has written about it. I should go and look to see if she's written any articles about it. She's a teacher.
Yeah. Now you've been a published author, as you say, for almost 20 years, or 20 years in June. And it's really impressive to see such longevity. And what do you think that the key to your continual success has been?
One, I have a kick-ass agent. She is amazing. I've had the same agent for 20 years. So, I signed with her 20 years ago in July. She is a kick-ass agent, and she has saved my butt many times over. And she's not just kick-ass, but she's very, very strategic, and she listens. We have conversations. This is what I say to people starting off is, you don't just want the agent who's going to sell your first book. What you want to have is the agent who sits down with you and says, where do you want to be in 5 years? And that, what's your goal in the next 5 years, Julie? Let's make that happen. And I love that. So I think that has been I was very, very fortunate to sign with her and to have her be my agent and such a huge champion of my work for nearly 20 years now. I also think just finding the joy in what you do, because writing is really hard, really, really hard. And it's quite soul destroying. And I think you have to focus almost entirely on the work itself, rather than the reception for your work, the money you get for your work, how well your work is doing in relation to other people, other people's work, whether you're getting lots of deals or not, or getting on these bestseller lists or whatever. You have all of that has to be, to a certain extent, peripheral, even though that's what the rest of the world sees, and it determines how lucrative your career is. The really important thing is the work itself. Yeah. The words that you put on the page and the stories that you tell. And I think the more you publish, the more you forget about that to a certain extent, because you get caught up in the business of it and the comparisonitis of it and the jockeying for status part of it. But in actual fact, we can't control any of that, obviously. The only thing we can control is the work that we do and our pride in it, and how much we care about it and how much it nourishes and sustains us. So being present, even though it's been a long career, in all that time, I have always striven to be present in the moment for my writing. Does that make sense? That what I'm doing right then is the thing that I must be doing really right then. Even if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's brilliant. That's really, really interesting and so true. I think it is as well. Like, you focus on the writing when you first start out, but the further down the path you go, you tend to focus more on the kind of businessy side of it. And it's important to focus on that joy of writing, I think.
And that's great advice.
Thank you. And the thing is that things that I do talk about it quite a bit, is that I fail a lot. So, I talk about my successes and things, but for example, during the pandemic, when we were all locked in, I was getting divorced. I was living in a house with my now ex-husband, who couldn't leave. We had split up and we're living in the same house together. It was a very, 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 very difficult time. I wrote a book during that time, which was unpublishable. It just wasn't any good. And I think probably had a lot of us had that because it was really hard to write during that time. But one of the lessons I learned from that is that book really did me a big favor, because it taught, even though it didn't succeed, it taught me to write in the moment, and it taught me to write what I needed to write at that moment. And you know, that book won't get published. It's made me zero money. That book owes me nothing, because I was present in that moment every day I sat down to write it. And that, it saved my sanity, right? That was the thing that I could control. And even though it wasn't good enough for all sorts of reasons, part of it being the circumstance in which it was written, because that was the thing I could control, and because that was the thing that was coming from here, that, you know, that it wasn't a waste of time.
That's amazing. Such a great way to look at it.
Yeah. Amazing. And we would like to ask you if you've read anything lately that you'd like to recommend.
You asked this question and I'm like, oh no, it's terrible, because I have read almost zero fiction recently. I am reading.
It's hard. You're very busy.
Yeah, no, it's not
when
that
you're
I
that
haven't been
busy.
reading. It's that I don't read fiction when I write fiction, and I have been writing almost constantly this year. So usually what I do is I don't read fiction while I'm actively writing a book, and then I have a glut of reading and reading and reading and reading in between when I'm in between. But because this year I have mostly just been writing, I've been reading nonfiction. And you know, some amazing nonfiction. I recently finished Doppleganger by Naomi Klein, which is fantastic, and actually really good for those of us writing suspense and thrillers and crime. Really good, even though it's not about, you know, crime. It's about doubling and identity. It's fantastic. It's also quite depressing.
I love that. I love it. It's brilliant. It's also quite depressing. Brilliant.
Well, because it's about climate change and conspiracy theories. And fascism. So it's a difficult read, but the concepts in it are really brilliant, really very good. I'm reading, again, depressing. Right now I'm reading Hannah Arendt's Eichmann in Jerusalem, A Study in the Banality of Evil, which is, you know, the account of Adolf Eichmann's trial for crimes against the Jewish people in Israel in the 60s. And you know, it's a classic, and it's relevant to today's world as well. I'm reading that, and again, depressing, fascinating, absolutely fascinating, and so much about the psychology of evil, the psychology of genocide, the psychology of following orders. It's very interesting and relevant, even though it's about a historical event.
Wow, yeah. What about you, Nikki? What have you been reading?
Well, I have just finished Lesley Cara's The Other Tenant, which I think you've read as well, Lauren.
Yeah, so, that's my book.
Yes, loved it. So that was really, really good. And I also really enjoyed this one, which I think we can, there we go, that way around. It's called Her Last Summer by Emily Freud. And it's a destination thriller, which is obviously got to be one of my favorite genres. And really, really enjoyed it. Very good story. Really very good twist. So one of those ones that you don't spot coming. So yes, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And how about you, Lauren? What have you read recently?
Well, I've been very lucky because I have read The Guest by the lovely Nikki Smith. I got an early copy of that, which is absolutely sensational and absolutely the perfect follow-up destination thriller for the beach party. And then, like you say, I've read the other Tenant by Lesley. Amazing again. Really love the setting, really eerie. And I am also listening to the Midwich Cuckoos, which is a 1957 science fiction novel, which I put about on Twitter because I can't remember the author's name, which is dreadful,
John
isn't it?
Wyndam.
Thank you, John Wyndam.
Yeah.
Because when I had lunch with Barnaby last week, he was reading this absolutely massive tome of a book, and I can't remember what it was, but it was just something completely different, and he was just reading it for fun. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, I suppose we can read outside our genre, can't we? And I think I just get so caught up in reading thrillers, and I get sent thrillers and I write thrillers. And I thought, right, well, I haven't got any credits left on Audible because my son's used them all. So I'll see what I can get for free. Well, not for free, part of your membership. And that was one of them. And it's absolutely sensational. It's so brilliantly written. So I'm really enjoying it. So it's really different as well. So I'm going to definitely do this more, I think. So that's it really. But sadly, that is all we've got time for in today's episode. Thank you so much for being so fun and so insightful as well, Julie. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Nikki. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and we need to do this over a glass of wine soon.
I would love
Absolutely.
that.
Always.
Yes. And Bad Men is out now. And as Nikki and I have both said, it's a fantastic and fun serial killer thriller that you will absolutely adore. So do look for that. And don't forget to check out also Julie's amazing creative writing courses she does on novel gazing.
Indeed. And in our next episode, we will be talking to Eleni Syriakou and Emma Flint on the topic of true crime fiction. But for now, we will say goodbye from Julie.
Bye.
Goodbye from Lauren.
Bye-bye.
And goodbye from me.